I'll mention it too. All right. Well, I'm the substitute preacher. Well, Steve's gone, so it's 6:35. So we'll pray and get started. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time, Lord. Just help me to best represent you, Lord, with your word. Just help us to learn and just to see the things that we need. And just pray for all those. Pray to keep Steve safe as he's traveling and all his family. And we're plotting against him while he's gone for the pastor appreciation. So we just pray that next Sunday that'll all go well. And we just thank you, Lord, for this time. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Oh, and if any of the ladies want to help set up Saturday morning, we'll be here at 8:30.
Okay?
For the dinner, Sunday dinner.
Okay.
And please want to. We need your help.
All right. So I don't know if you got the thing back there, but we're going to be doing a certain amount of Bible reading here. But basically, what I was going to talk to you about is different things here. It's about leadership. It's about some of the things we need to do with God's power and helping us to pray. And where we're going to talk about this is with Saul. When King Saul, or he wasn't king yet, but when he was made king, and some of the good qualities that he had at that time, and then he went downhill. So, and what this kind of relates to is our eldership, how we're going with the New Testament as far as how we don't believe one man should be king, and because it creates a lot of problems. And the last time when I said no one man can be king, I heard some amens from some of the women in the congregation. So, but it also means that no women or men can be sole people in charge a lot of times, just because it creates a lot of problems there. And it all basically started when Israel decided that they didn't need God as their king. He had been taking care of them, and they wanted a king. And some of this, as we'll see later on, is because the Ammonites, I think I'm saying that right, were kind of building up an army, and they were on the outside of Israel. And Israel was just like 12 tribes that weren't really organized. So they were becoming concerned there. There was also the Philistines that were also organizing there. And so they were getting concerned. And these people all had kings, and they were all kind of organized, so they were worried about that. So they asked for a king. When they didn't really need one, but they thought they did. Now we all know Saul became king and was corrupted with power. But he started off with some good qualities. And we will also be discussing them again, no matter who the man is, a single man just can't handle the power of being the only person in charge. One of the sayings is, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And all the kings of Israel had this problem. Whenever he had the power, then they decided, like King Solomon, he led Israel in adultery. He had 700 wives and concubines, and boy, I'm worried about getting 3 kids through college. He had 700 wives and concubines. That means he had 1,400 kids, and it means he had to have a pretty good college fund. So anyway, amongst a lot of other problems there with having that many wives. But anyway, God never intended for man to have so much power as a king has. Because let's face it, it's good to have someone challenge us. As here again, as the elders group, it's good to have people question us. And in my situation, I have a wife that many times questions me, and as much as I hate to admit it sometimes, a lot of times she's right. So it's good to have someone questioning us. And as men, we like to be in charge and control, but sometimes we lose focus when we have too much power. So anyway, back to the king corruption problem. Now we're going to look at 1 Samuel 9, verses 1 through 5. Kish was a rich, influential man from the tribe of Benjamin. He was the son of Abiel and grandson of Zeror, from the family of Bechorath, and the clan of Uphiah. His son was the most handsome man in Israel, head and shoulders taller than anyone else in the land. One day he kissed his donkey straight away, and he told Saul, "Take a servant with you and go look for them." So Saul took one of his servants and traveled all through the hill country of Ephraim, the land of Shaliah, the Shalom area, and the entire land of Benjamin. But they could not find the donkeys anywhere. Finally they entered the region of Zoph, and Saul said to his servant, "Let's go home. By now my father would be more worried about us than about the donkeys." So right off, Saul's from an influential family. And I don't know about you, but I don't really know what age he was, but when I ask my kids to go do something, especially I can imagine if it was to go chase donkeys, I'm going to get some flack. Like, well, why don't you get Haley to do it? Or why don't you get, or like in his situation, here he is tall and handsome and they're rich. He'd say, "Well, Dad, why don't you have one of the servants go do it?" But he didn't, he went and did it. So that was a good thing on Saul's part. He knew what he had to do, and he went and did it. And the other thing was, when they talk about handsome, I think there's only 3 times in here when they talk about who handsome people are. One was Saul, one was Joseph. He was handsome and good in form, which must mean he was in good shape. David was handsome and ruddy. I don't really know quite what ruddy is. That's a different interpretation, but it must not have been bad if it was started with handsome. What's that? Ruddy. Oh, okay. Rough. Okay. As long as they started with handsome, you're good to go there. And then Absalom, David's son, the one I think ended up trying to take over David's kingdom, and he was killed. But he was beautiful from head to toe. So that's a grade higher than handsome, I guess. So anyway, for Saul to be called handsome in here means that he must have been a pretty good-looking guy. And here again, when the people of Israel thought of a king, they're sure they thought of a tall, good-looking man from an influential family. This is kind of similar to the kind of things that we're looking for. So some more positive traits from these verses is that when Saul told his father, "You're going to go look for the donkeys," he went and did it. And he looked for 3 days, as we find out later on. And it's probably kind of tiring and boring, but he went and did what he had to do. In verse 5, Saul shows he's concerned because his father's worried more about him than his donkeys. This is another important part of being a leader, being concerned or considerate about others' feelings. And here again, they've traveled for 3 days with no results, so he's concerned about being productive here. You can't keep, we say beating a dead horse, but here it might have been beating a dead donkey. But they find out later on the donkeys are okay. So now we look at 1 Samuel 9, verses 6 and 10. But the servant said, "I have just thought of something. There's a man of God who lives here in town. He is held in high honor by all the people because everything he says comes true. So let's go find him. Perhaps he can tell us which way to go." And in verse 10, Saul says, "All right." Saul agrees, "Let's try it." So they started into town where the man of God was. And in verses 7, 8, and 9, it talks about having something to offer the seer or the prophet. They come with a small silver piece. But one of the things here, too, is that Saul listens to his servant, because I imagine after 3 days of walking around the country, as a rich guy, he's ready to go home and have the servants wave a palm leaf on him or something. I'm sure he's going to rather go take it easy, but he says, "Okay, you got a good idea, let's do it." So they went to talk to the seer, who was Samuel, and as it says in verse 6, I think it is, everything he says comes true. That'd be nice to have. And that, so here again, how many times in our lives are we doing boring but necessary things, wishing it was something more exciting, and may not be doing our best? I don't know about you, but I'm sure I do that. We may find ourselves here again just doing like he's looking for donkeys. As it'll say later on, he comes up from following the oxen. But we need to do what we need to do as best we can. As it says in 1 Corinthians 10:31, "Whatever you do, do all to the glory of God." Another example, and I used this last time, of somebody doing something boring was when David was the cheese delivery boy, and his dad sent him to deliver cheese, and he ends up killing Goliath. So when you do what the Lord has you doing, and when it's time to step up, you step up. And we'll see this later on, even for Saul. So, and now in verses 11 and 12, Saul and the servants talk to some young women, and they ask where the seer is, and are told Samuel the seer is at the public gate. Okay, we're going to read verses 14, 15, 16, and 17. So they entered the town, and as they passed through the gate, Samuel was coming out towards them to climb the hill. Now the Lord had told Samuel the previous day, about this time tomorrow, I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin, anoint him to be leader of my people, Israel. He will rescue them from the Philistines, for I have looked down on my people in mercy and have heard their cry. When Samuel noticed Saul, the Lord said, that's the man I told you about. He will rule my people. One of the things when I was looking up the Philistines, I was trying to figure out how they were related to the Ammonites, because they were concerned about them, but the Lord's saying the Philistines. But the Philistines, I looked it up, they had the atomic bomb at that time, which means they had metal. The Israelites didn't have, it says later on in Samuel 13:9, they had no blacksmith. But first you read that along, you think the blacksmith was on vacation or something, but they didn't have a blacksmith. So the Philistines had metal, so they were able, so if you have that metal with your swords and spears and your knives, you have a definite advantage. So it was the atomic bomb of that time. The other thing that I looked up on them that jumped out was that they were the known boozers of the day. What I mean boozers is they had figured out how to make barley beer. Everybody knew they were big drinkers. So, there's the Lord's humor again. You give the drunks the atomic bomb. So that caused them a lot of problems. But I thought, well, that was interesting. So, anyway, you kind of wonder why Samuel wasn't the king instead of Saul, because he was the seer. But as later on we'll see. So, verse 18, 19, and 20. Just then Saul approached Samuel at the gateway and asked, can you please tell me where the seer's house is? I am the seer, Samuel replied. Go up the hill ahead of me to the place of sacrifice, and we will eat there together. In the morning I will tell you what you want to know and send you on your way. And don't worry about those donkeys that were lost 3 days ago. This is how we do it 3 days. For they have been found, and I am here to tell you that you and your family are the focus of all Israel's hope. So that'd be your first key when the seer tells you the focus of all Israel's hope. So Saul, he's talked to the seer, who's held in high honor, because in verse 6 it says pretty much everything he says comes true. He finds out he's all of Israel's hope. So some people you think might get kind of puffed up after hearing that, but as you'll see in verse 21, Saul replied, but I am only from Benjamin, the smallest tribe in Israel, and my family is the least important of all the families of that tribe. Why are you talking like this to me? So he's either not wanting to, take this responsibility, or there's a lot of responsibility to this, but anyway, he's not just jumping right on the bandwagon and say, okay, now I'm king, so things are going to start happening around here the way I say. And then in verse 22, then Samuel brought Saul and his servant into the great hall and placed them at the head of the table, honoring them above the 30 special guests. So here again, he's being told he's important. But Saul, like he stated, is from a small tribe, but is now being honored in the great hall at the head of the table. And it goes on in verses 23 and 24, talking about Samuel saving the finest cut of meat for the guest of honor. Samuel also prepares a place for Saul to sleep that night, waking up in the morning. And then in verse 27 it states, when they reached the edge of town, Samuel told Saul to send his servant on ahead. After the servant was gone, Samuel said, stay here, for I have received a special message for you from God. And now we get into 1 Samuel 10, verse 1, where it talks about Samuel pouring a flask of oil over Saul's head. He kisses Saul on the cheek and told him he is the leader of God's people. And as I read verses 6, 7, and 8, you'll see this. And there's 7 in here I think is very important. At the time the Spirit of the Lord will come upon you with power, and you will prophesy with him. You will be changed into a different person. After these signs take place, do whatever you think is best, for God will be with you. Go ahead of me to Gilgal. I will surely come down to you to sacrifice burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, but you must wait 7 days until I come to you and tell you what you are to do. So if you look at 7 says, after these signs take place, do whatever you think is best, for God will be with you. Sometimes this can be interpreted as do what you think is right. Because as God is with you, you'll be changed. After you're saved, you'll be changed and do what you think is right. As you're going to see, Saul will do what he thinks is right, and then it's downhill from there, but he started off okay. Okay, just going over some of the things we talked about. That we should look for leaders. Saul, you need leaders that are hardworking, respectful, like Saul when he was told to go find the donkeys. Leaders need to be able to listen when someone has a good idea, like the servant. We also need to remember to use God's power, not our own. He wants to give us His power, and we need to look for, as when God sends something to us, we need to do what is right. And that's from verse 7. Okay, moving on. 1 Samuel 10, 9 through 13. As Saul turned to leave Samuel, God changed Saul's heart, and all these signs were fulfilled that day. When they arrived at Gibeah, a procession of prophets met him. The Spirit of God came upon him in power. He joined in their prophecy. When all those who had formerly known him saw him prophesying with the prophets, they asked each other, "What is this that has happened to the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets?" And a man who lived there answered, "And who is their father?" So it became a saying, "Is Saul among the prophets?" After Saul stopped prophesying, he went to the high place. And like I was saying earlier, why did God make Saul the king and not Solomon? But we see here that now Saul is the prophet. But the other thing I like about the Bible is it doesn't tell you, okay, Saul's the king and everybody bowed down. It even says in here, and one guy said, and who's their father? Which is kind of an indication like, what's Saul is the prophet? And then at the bottom it said, and who's their father? And it became a saying, is Saul among the prophets? So this is kind of as I was reading in the NIV, it seemed kind of hardcore to me, but it says, here Saul was basically a donkey wrangler, and now he's a prophet. So the one guy that was there said, what's Saul doing being the prophet? So in other words, God may bring people up who weren't the king, or weren't Solomon the king. It's Saul, who was basically a donkey wrangler. So anyway, here it is. And who's their father? And this may be intended as a disdainful reference to Samuel, or a jab at Saul. Okay, verses 14 through 16. Now Saul's uncle asked him and his servants, "Where have you been?" "Looking for the donkeys," he said. "But when we saw they were not to be found, we went to Samuel." Saul's uncle said, "Tell me what Samuel said to you." And Saul replied, "He assured us the donkeys had been found, but he didn't tell his uncle what Samuel had said about the kingship." So why didn't he tell his uncle about the kingship? I don't know. Sometimes it's better for somebody else, if you've been promoted, somebody else to tell about your promotion rather than you, then it's bragging. Either that or he's still concerned about the responsibilities in being king. And he's been given the best cut of meat in front of 30 important people and all this. So, it should be, and then it was God's, as Samuel said, God had some important words for him, so he should be catching on by now. Okay, I'm going to kind of summarize here. Some of the ones summarized 17 through 21. But Samuel summoned the people of Israel, and he talks about all the tribes, talked about how they had rejected the Lord as their king and wanted a man for king. And then in verse 22, when they were looking for Samuel, they couldn't find him. So where's Samuel? Where's the king? And the interpretation here was, the Lord said, yes, he has hidden himself among the baggage. And some say this said baggage, some say equipment, but the baggage. So then the people shouted, "Long live the king." So here again, the Lord tells the whole story's there. He hid himself in the baggage. That just seems kind of odd for the guy that's the king. So it sounds like Saul, this kind of supports again the elders things. It sounds like Saul has some things going on that are interesting to say the least. He didn't mention to the uncle he's the king. Now he's hiding in the baggage when they're presenting him as king. And for me, this shows reasons that it's risky or bad to have a single person as a king. Because many of us men have quirks and baggage that some we know about and some quirks we don't know about. And here again, this is possibly why they're in the New Testament, there are elders that lead the church. In 1 Samuel, it goes on to talk about Saul rescuing the city of Jabesh. And this is where it appears God sent a challenge to Saul to do, as I mentioned in verse 7, to do what is right. And he did. In rescuing Jabesh, all starts in chapter 11, where Nahash, the Ammonite, went up and attacked Jabesh Gilead. This is a small town on the outside area. As I was talking about, this is why they wanted a king. Outside area where the small, unorganized tribes of Israel lived. Now, Nahash, his name kind of, if you say it, Nahash, it kind of sounds like a snake. And this guy is a snake. And his name, I looked it up, and his name means serpent. I think it was mentioned in the Old Testament that, I don't know quite how it works, but anyway, it wasn't, And here again, when I say he's a nasty guy, which kind of was kind of the norm back then, but when he attacked Jabesh Gilead, the small town, the elders knew that they were losing. So they said, okay, we'll make a treaty with you and we'll be your subjects. And this guy said, okay, that'd be fine. And this is in the verses. Sure, but I will gouge out the right eye of every one of you, and so bring disgrace on all of Israel. Who would think of that? Gouge out the right eye. I'm sure everybody in the town's thinking, I like my right eye. And back then they didn't have antibiotics, so I'm sure you could get your right eye gouged out. And I don't know how long you're going to make it, but it's just amazing sometimes how mean people can be. And some things about the Ammonites. There's been bad blood between the Ammonites and the Israelites back as far as Exodus. The Ammonites didn't allow the Israelites to pass through their land, and for this reason, they were excluded from the family of God for 10 generations. This is in Deuteronomy 23:3. And Nahash attacks, as it said here in the information stuff, were what triggers to unite the various tribes under King Saul. The Ammonites lived north of the Dead Sea, with the main city at the headwaters of Jabbok River, which today is Jordan. And supposedly King David, after Saul, had some good dealings with Nahash, but not with his successor. So after Nahash was King Han, H-A-N-U-N. Some of these I looked up for pronunciation, and obviously some of them I didn't. And in fact, when King David was courting Bathsheba, he sent her husband to fight against the Ammonites. So it just kind of keeps going. And then it ends up King Solomon's chief wife. I didn't realize there was a chief wife and regular wives, but evidently so. Naamah was an Ammonitess. So they're all mixed in here the whole time. And they have some good, I guess they have good relationships and bad relationships. That's kind of changes. But anyway, I thought it was interesting. The elders of Jabesh wisely asked this Nahash guy for 7 days to see if anyone would save them. Seems kind of interesting. I guess they thought that he was so sure of himself, that was the theory on this one thing I looked up, that he would just give them 7 days because they weren't going to find anybody that was going to save them. So sometime now, I guess, I don't think that's going to work good in Iran or Iraq. Say, hey, can you guys hold on for 7 days? We're going to see if we can come up with something else. But anyway, it worked for them. And he was so cocky that that is when Saul, and this is in the verses too, Saul was returning from the fields behind his oxen. This is the guy here again that had the best cuts of meat in front of the 30 most important people. He is told he's king. They drug him out of the baggage to be king. He's a king, but he's coming up behind the oxen, and he hears that Nahash has attacked Jabesh, and that's when he starts, as I was saying earlier in verse 7, he steps up and does what is right. He organizes the people, and they defeat Nahash, and he's confirmed as king. And that's probably the confirmation as king. Is after he did that, maybe everybody else was just calling him the donkey wrangler and weren't paying any attention to him. But when he saved them and defeated Nahash, they again made sure he was the king. So, and just to kind of, to make sure we go through the whole process here, we don't have time to go into all the things that he did bad. I'll do that next time. But next in 1 Samuel 12, it talks about Samuel's farewell speech. Now Samuel is the seer, and he's the one that's saying, okay, I'm not the real power guy now, Saul is. So I'm stepping down. And he has some very honorable things that he says there. And then next, it talks about in 13, this is just one chapter away, about Samuel rebuking Saul. So it didn't take him very long for after one good battle, and he's going downhill. So, and he's already forgot who his Lord is and what he should be doing. So, in summarizing, it's good. Is it good for any one person to be in the position that they don't have to answer anyone for? For example, king. It doesn't appear to be so. Certainly for Saul, it doesn't appear to be so in the New Testament. And again, that's why it supports the elders. Saul is made up is king, starts off with good qualities, but the power corrupts. More than one wife isn't good, and 7 are really bad because there's no way a man can get that many kids through college. And we all need to do the best we can in whatever God has given us to do, even if we think it isn't exciting, like searching for lost donkeys. But when God calls us to do what is right, we need to step up, even as small as it may be or as big as it may be. All right, went through it reasonably fast, but any questions? Okay.
In chapter 12, Samuel told them, he said, only fear the Lord and serve him in truth with all your heart, and consider what great things he has done for you. And so if we take that advice, then we're going to be okay.
Right.
Consider what the Lord will
What
say.
he's done for us. And again,
And serve him.
right. And I'd never seen it like in the verse 7 where it said, it showed where you need to, step up, do what's right. And, we get in those situations where we have to do what's right. And it can be difficult. We were talking about in the elders class in the book, it said that and you've seen some of the history churches, they don't do it. When an elder does something wrong, it needs to be made public. So that, and get that out of the way, because you don't just hide it in the elders group. It needs to be made public. And this is difficult at first, but look at, Catholic churches, some of the other churches, when they hide stuff, it just comes back and bites you. So we were talking about how sometimes elders get double honor, but if you mess up, you get double trouble. So, and that's the way it should be. So those are the times when to step up, and just little things, that we need to pay attention to. So, yes.
I like what you said, that we need to do the best we can in whatever God has given us to do. And it may not always be something that we would want to do, but if we know, that part I don't know if I agree with, because if it's something I know God wants me to do, then that, whether it's exciting to me or not, I better do it.
Right.
Because I want to do it. But I think that's great, because that's what we need to be reminded of.
And I think sometimes, like Steve has said, is that, when we think of something and something's on our heart to do something, like from reading Proverbs, I keep thinking, man, we got to do something with kids, because that seems like the way to go. But if we keep not doing anything, or if I keep not doing anything, because that's what's on my heart, I need to try to figure out something to do there. But if it's something, you don't do it long enough, your heart hardens and it don't do it. So don't wait. Sometimes you don't want to wait until there's more signs. Maybe if it's on your heart, you need to do it at that time, and don't mess around too long, or your heart will harden and you'll end up not doing it.
And then God will quit talking to you, quit nudging you.
Right. And that could be what happened to Saul here. He just, wasn't, he started off right, but went downhill from there. So.
Well, if you give God the glory in everything you do, you'll never get where you see Him.
it's easy it's easy to get distracted with stuff though. I mean,
Itself.
yeah. And again, I thought, we're talking about this too, is in Proverbs. I had never even thought of this, but it was surety. I forget what it is. It's in the next Proverbs thing. In other words, don't loan to a friend, because that will cause problems. And I was thinking, I mean, it's good to loan to friends. You try to help them out.
Well, if you do, don't expect to get it back.
Don't expect to get it back.
And
right?
that's hard to do.
So if you loan with the attitude that you're giving it,
And that's a good
and
point.
if something happens to it, or.
Because this was
bottles are
saying,
broken,
and this was
not your anymore.
George Fowler's thing, but it was talking about that and said, because it's messed up a lot of leaders, because then they lose so much money, it affects their family, and then they try to make the money back, so then that causes them to do things they wouldn't normally do. So it messes up the leadership side to where they're not leaders anymore because they loaned that money and got behind in payments because they loaned the money. And so, you know, and that again, if you're always, sometimes you have to be careful. Well, you have to follow this because this will save you from loaning to a friend, which you would think would be a good thing. Sometimes, you know, to help a friend out. And it'd be a Christian thing to do to help a friend out, but again, it's not always the thing to do. Sometimes you have to tell them that I just can't do it because in the long run it's not going to work out. So, anyway. Anything else? I appreciate your patience. And we'll pray unless we do have, just again, we need some food for the funeral. So if anybody can, Sylvia, you talk to Sylvia tomorrow by 1 o'clock, again, just to make sure that.
Any kind of side dish,
Side
let it
dishes.
go with the sandwiches.
And then again, Sunday, when we're kind of get set up for pastor appreciation. So, okay. All right. Yes, sir.
Steve came back tonight, so we were talking about this last night. We were trying to make Sunday somewhat of a pleasant surprise. We got a couple of his brothers are coming in, and there's some family that are coming in, and we're trying to keep as much of it from him as possible. So I don't know, if we see Steve or we talk to him, be a little bit careful. It's not a big to-do, but I don't think he knows a whole lot right now. I think he's just kind of poo-pooed it off, and he's just going to go down the road. He's planning on doing what he normally does on a Sunday, and I think we have Sunday set up as a very pleasant time. It's going to be a nice Sunday, and it's not going to be a place where Steve will be preaching on Sunday. One of his other brothers will. And we have music from the Spark Radio. They're coming up, and they plan on doing as much as they possibly can. So, and then there's a little bit of there's communion on Sunday. So it's going to be a very pleasant service Sunday. But we have to try and figure out a way to either keep Steve away or not to let the cat out of the bag, however that might be.
All right.
We should have got him about 72 holes of golf.
Good work now.
Would have known he was coming back, he could have played 18 holes until Sunday.
So I imagine like tomorrow morning, he'll be in here tomorrow morning.
Yeah, but